Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. Today, we're going to be talking about the Sumerian connection to our faith, the Abrahamic faith. Most Christians, I'm just going to talk about Christians for a second, do not know of the origin of our faith because most Christians have never really read the Bible. They just listen to their preacher and what their preacher has to tell them, and they take it hook, line, and sinker. No forethought, no real desire to seek the truth, even though the Bible clearly tells you to seek and ye shall find. But our original origins come from Samaria. For those who do not know, Abraham came from the Sumerian city of Ur. Ur was, for the longest time, the capital of the Sumerian city-states. It held the most power. It was the center of commerce, etc. Before that was the city of Nippur, and before that the city of Eridu. But Abraham came from Ur. I'm sure many of you are hopefully familiar with the great ziggurat of Ur. Our origins from Abraham back to Adam were all essentially Sumerians and Mesopotamians. They were in that Fertile Crescent, what is today Iraq. Much of the cities are obviously long forgotten and destroyed and buried beneath sands that accumulated after the Great Flood, except for some structures did survive, such as the Great Ziggurat. Genesis. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. The creation tale that tells of how the Elohim, plural, obviously, the Elohim created man. The Elohim are, again, multiple beings. It is not singular in the least. Most people do not bother to take the time to question this. They don't think. They don't wonder. They just accept whatever their pastor or their rabbi or their imam tells them. In fact, most Muslims are illiterate. The Jews, though, they are familiar with a lot of this. But Christians are not. Because of the fact that they go to church, they say they're sorry, they put some money in a plate, and they expect to go on about their lives. And they don't ever question that. So today, I have brought you to the Ecumenical Order of Christ file section in the archive, where it tells you of the 7 tablets of creation, known as the Enuma Elish. You can go here to this top address. you can see now, obviously, the address up here where you can find it. If you need to, you can go to facebook.com/groups/ICOLR, go to the files section, go to the EOC archives, click this archives button, can go to the Google Drive, go to documentation in ancient Mesopotamia. And there you will find the Enuma Elish and the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest tales that has been released, at least to the public. Keep in mind, there has been many tablets that have been retrieved from that area that are sitting within museums, in the back rooms, and they don't release them because what they say goes against what the mainstream media, mainstream archaeology, and mainstream historians, and mainstream everything, it goes against what they say. I'm not going to read you this entire thing because it is quite extensive. You can see right here, it is 26 pages. So I encourage you all to go to where I showed you in the files section and go read the Enuma Elish. Go read the Epic of Gilgamesh. Our story in Genesis, again with the Elohim, begins right here in Sumerian. The original creator gods, council, the Anunnaki, for those that are fully aware, and for those of you who maybe are not aware. The original Elohim, creator gods, the Anunnaki, met in a council because at the time, from where they are, planet Nibiru, planet X, as some of you might be aware, their planet at the time was dying and they needed gold, and they had to dig for it here. And there was an uprising because many of them did not want to dig anymore. So they met in a council and they decided to create a less inferior being called man, us. The original purpose was simply as a workforce so they could farm the gold and dig, and then they would eventually die off because just like a crossbred mule cannot naturally breed, the original humans or the original man was not able to reproduce. They lacked that ability. But Enki, the one who was originally in charge of Earth, who came to here first to help mine the gold and set up the labor camps, etc., he wanted a kingdom of his own. So he went against the council's decision and he manipulated the creation he originally made and allowed them to breed. This is why in Genesis you see that all of a sudden they became aware that they were naked and they hid. the story is quite extensive. If you bother to actually go into uh, into further research and depth, um, you can find much more information on this creation story, the true depth of it. Um, there's some media, there's some YouTube channels that have taken the creation story and made like a skit out of it. Much of what we have been told has been hidden from us because though some who decided to take control and take power turned the original truths that was given to mankind and manipulated them in order to gain power. That's why we have religion today. Plus, many of this original story was lost right after the Great Flood. That's why God gave Moses the Torah in such a way that was extremely condensed version of all of this, such as the God. It says God created the heavens and the earth, right? It says God created the firmament up in the heavens. He separated the day from the night. And it's very short, one sentence lines, very pointed and targeted. But in the actual creation story, there are 7 tablets for the 7 days of creation that you find in the Bible, where it actually goes into much greater detail about how the solar system was formed, what happened, how the earth came into being, how the waters came into being, how certain animals were brought to earth and are here. Much greater detail is found within the Enuma Elish and the Sumerian tablets of creation. You even read how in the beginning Adam and many of the original patriarchs lived almost 1,000 years. Well, if you were to look up the Sumerian kings list, you'll see that the Sumerian gods actually lived tens of thousands of years. Even if you go to YouTube, you start researching Genesis, Sumerian creation, you type in, let's say, Ancient Aliens, or the Ancient Alien series, or Zachariah Sitchin. You can find, if you really start researching, things like this. Enuma Elish complete audiobook, 43 minutes long. You can listen to it. I know in my journey to come to the truth, I had learned what many of the religious institutions, Roman Catholic, Baptist, Foursquare Gospel, Presbyterian, and the hundreds of other denominations, I've heard every story possible, and none of them made sense until I started actually looking at things in a much different way and started actually paying attention to even some of the phrases we say today. Such as in our labs, we call gene splicing and genetic manipulation playing God. Why do you think we actually say stuff like this? It is because the original creators were genetically manipulating species at the time. In the beginning, they took the greatest ape and spliced it with their genes, Anunnaki genes, to create what you might call, and this is perhaps very offensive to some people, but it is the truth, what you might call a retarded Anunnaki. Because the original man was not created to be a sentient being. It wasn't created to have all of the knowledge and gifts and abilities the original creation from God had. It was created to be a simple worker, just smart enough to obey orders and do the work, but not smart enough to be on the same sentient level as the Anunnaki. I encourage all of you right now to, this day at least, read the Enuma Elish, read the Epic of Gilgamesh, look into the connections, the similarities between the original creation story in Sumeria and Genesis, and you will find that it is the exact same story. Exactly the same. Just retold. Some might call it the Eridu Genesis. Eridu was the first Sumerian city. It was the home of Enki. You can find other links to ancient Sumeria, such as in Africa they have Adam's calendar. All of this is truly mind-boggling, and it is too much for me to even cover in today's live stream. We have a video I believe actually it is on Prime Cleric Richard Ruff's channel. The Mankind's True History, The Gods, Enki, and Enlil, created 3 years ago. It's almost 18 minutes long, but it is a fascinating video. But you can take just bits and pieces of this, and you can start doing further research. Now, outside of our order, there's a lot of convoluted information, misinformation. Even the actual stories of Sumeria are not exactly true, because you have to remember that the scribes who wrote down the stories were biased against those who actually fed them and housed them and kept them. So stories much of Enlil, the stories of Enlil are not exactly painted in the best light, because at the time the two brothers were feuding. You can read stuff like the Pyramid Wars, which is where in the Bible you get references to the evil East. Many of the Sumerian stories are referenced in the Bible, but they are referenced so vaguely that unless you know the Sumerian history, you will never make this connection, because it is so short and so vague. This stream is going to be extremely short today because I really want all of you to do the research. Start watching Ancient Aliens. Go to Prime Cleric Richard Ruff's site. Watch this video, Mankind's True History, the Gods Enki and Enlil. Read the Enuma Elish. Read the Epic of Gilgamesh. Read the Sumerian Kings list. And you will start seeing the true connection to Sumeria. It's all there. Adam in the Garden of Eden, if you dig far enough, you can trace exactly where Garden of Eden is. It's not exactly where they say it is in the mainstream, but you can locate it. You can even locate Noah's Ark, as I said in my last stream, from Moron Wyatt, because they tell you it is not exactly where it is. If you do the research and dig deep enough, instead of accepting the first thing that comes to you, really seek the truth, you will find it. That's all for today. I really appreciate all of you tuning in. May God bless you, Lord Ryle's name. I hope that you find and seek the knowledge that will start to reveal more and more of what our original origins are, what the original purpose we were made for. I know as much as the old question goes, why are we here? What is our purpose? The original purpose is very not what people might have expected. But what that purpose, original purpose, is turning into means more, because God and the Lord, the Messiah, wants us to become more, to evolve more, and become like them, to have a moral compass, to care for one another, to love God, love each other. Anyway.